Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. If you guys will turn your mics on, hit the little red button at the bottom of there. There you go.
What?
Okay,
Or we're just done.
What was
that doesn't work, Pam. That doesn't make sense. Three at a time.
Well, we are going to request the we're still working out the kinks.
Okay. Yeah, they make a lot of noise, that's for sure. Okay, going to call this meeting to order. Please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Is there any public comment at this time? A verification of posting of agenda.
Pam Moore, for the record, the agenda was posted on June 15th between the hours of 2 and 4 at the locations listed on the agenda in accordance with statutes.
Thank you, Pam. Consideration and possible action approval of minutes of the meeting. Consideration and possible action approval of agenda as submitted or revised. Do I have a motion to accept this
I'll make a
agenda?
motion. I'll make a motion to accept the approval of agenda.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the agenda as submitted. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passed. Consideration of possible action approval of minutes of the meeting held on March 8th, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting on March 8th, 2023.
Have a second?
No, second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the meeting held on March 8th, 2023. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. Okay, first item of discussion is an update on the Nevada Department of Wildlife Fisheries regulation changes in the future. Chris, would you like to?
Yep, Chris Urquhart, Department of Wildlife Fisheries Biologist for Carson and Walker River Basins. We have,
You put that a little bit closer because
You know, Eric,
I
how
get
about
kind of
that?
an echo here, so, okay.
I'm getting an echo on
Thank
this
you.
side. You guys are, but
there's several changes that we're going to be recommending for our September-ish commission meeting. What we want to do initially is come to the cabs and get feedback from you guys on some of the proposed regulation changes before we make the final draft language for those that will come up, like I said, in 2 months for those, the regular cycle for our reg changes. The biggest point of conversation that we would like to have is regarding the possession limit addition. So changing just our limit of fish to a daily limit and a possession limit of fish. So that will be basically a double of the general limits for the region. So it doesn't apply to special limits in any water body that, for instance, has a zero fish limit, that will remain a zero fish limit. But for general water bodies that don't have any special regulations, this would apply for all of them. So is double the daily limits that we have now for the region, which is 5 trout, 10 mountain whitefish, 15 warm water game fish, of which not more than 5 may be black bass and 5 may be walleye. So we're doubling those for a possession limit. Similar to our small game regulations for chucker, ducks, that kind of thing, there's a possession limit. This is basically the same for fish. It's to help initially with confusion among a lot of anglers about how many fish they can keep, like when they're camping. We just have a limit of fish. So if they catch their limit, can they fish the next day? Can they not fish the next day? If they go to a different water body, can they continue to fish if they already have their limit of fish? So this will help in that respect, as well as make it a little more liberal so people will be able to keep more fish when they're out fishing. They can keep their daily limit one day and they can go out and catch another daily limit the next day. That's kind of the broad overview. Some of the specific situations that will need some, might need some clarification. I don't know if it's going to be in a regulation or just a public notice type thing. So if you're fishing in one water body and you catch your daily limit, will apply to that water body. You could go to another water body and catch your daily limit there. And as long as you remain under your possession limit of 10, you're still legal. So you can catch multiple limits from different water bodies at the same time. That's one of the things we want to discuss with you guys. And so you're aware, once we get our feedback from all the cabs, we're also going to be bringing this to our law enforcement division and going over all these changes with them too before we get our final draft language. Make sure that we're not missing anything, or it's not going to be interpreted differently than what we're anticipating.
Hey, just a question now. Did you say that would only apply to the general fishing limit waters?
It will apply to all the waters, but it's a double of the general limits.
Okay.
So-
So if a wild horse that has a 5 trout limit, the possession would be 10.
Correct. So for a place like Hinkson, for instance, where you can keep 2 trout over 16 inches, you could keep your 2 trout that day. You could go back and fish the next day. You can keep your 2 trout, but your possession is only 4. So you can go fish somewhere else and catch 6 and keep them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not in this region. You can go somewhere else and catch 5 and keep them, and you still be under your possession limit of fish for the weekend. So like North Pond. So if I wanted to fish Hinkson 2 days and catch, a couple fish there each day, and then I got my daily limits from fish at Hinkson, I can go down to North Pond and keep 5 more. So it hopefully that's what we're anticipating the interpretation will be with our law enforcement division. The other conversation that has come up with the other cabs so far being, I don't know if Washos was last night, and I haven't followed up with them in Washoe County yet, but with Humboldt, Mineral, and Douglas County, there is also conversation about when a fish goes from a possessed fish to a preserved fish, and it no longer counts towards your possession limit. That same conversation is had with small game. How many ducks can you have in your freezer, and at what stage of cooking do they need to be before they no longer count against your possession limit of ducks or chuckers, for instance. So I don't know if we're going to tackle that issue with our fishing regulations. I would guess we probably won't, because we haven't wanted to try to define in regulation all the different situations that people have at home in their freezers. There's all different ways that people store fish or game in their freezers, and there's no way that we're going to be able to identify each one of those and determine, okay, if you pickle it, it's preserved. If you just fillet it and freeze it, it's still possession. There's no way we're going to get into that stuff. So, but that has been a conversation amongst other cabs. So if you guys want to try to get into that, feel free.
Actually, I'm kind of curious. So it counts as possession in your freezer?
Yeah.
Always has.
So if you have frozen ducks in your freezer, they still count towards your possession limit of 21 ducks.
Hayden's allowed possession. You're not to give them to the rest of the kids.
It's interesting information. I
How
did not
many
know
you
that.
should.
Legally, that's what the law is. So there is, that's on our law enforcement division to enforce those regulations, and they do a good job when necessary, I think, in following up on those things. It's, that I think gets into the 95%, 5% type situation. 95% of people are doing it right and being responsible with their game that they have at home. There's 5% that probably aren't. And so that's, this will roll right into that. It'll be something that they'll have to keep an eye on and make sure that people are being appropriate with their limits. There's some other changes that we can get into with some of the other counties. That's the only one that's would affect Churchill County, and it's a regional regulation change, so it would apply to water bodies here. So I've gone through most of all the water bodies and all the special regulations that I can think of for the waters that I manage anyway. And there's the only one that came up that I don't have an answer for that I would like to get your input on is the 25 fish limit for the Lahontan Valley. It's a special regulation. The 25 warm water fish that are, downstream of Lahontan. So that double the possession limit is 30. So you could still keep your daily limit and be under the possession limit. However, our intent is for people to be able to catch 2 days worth of fish and keep them if they want, which that would put them over the general regulation of 20 warm water, or 30. So they would be actually able to keep 50 if it was double the special regulation for Churchill County. So that's the only instance where it doesn't fit, where our special regulations are more lenient than our general regulations. Everywhere else we have a special regulation, it's more conservative than the general
Right patch is
regulation.
25 now, isn't it?
Right patch is too, yeah. So those two situations. I don't know if we want to add into the special regulation that the water bodies that have a 25 fish limit would also be a special regulation to allow possession of 50 fish in those water bodies, or if we want to leave it at this, the way it is, and have a special regulation that says 25 fish without an amendment to the possession on it.
So did you say I haven't figured out where it goes from your daily catch to your possession?
No, so once you reduce it to possession, whether it's in camp or whether it's you're on the shoreline or it's on your stringer, that's possession. When you get it home, it's still possessed fish.
Mhm.
It's when it becomes a preserved fish, whether it's cooked. I mean, obviously, if it's cooked, it's preserved, but if you cook it and then put it back in your freezer, you're still possessing the fish.
Sure, but I'm more curious about when you're talking about you can go from one body of water with your daily limit to another body of water, catch another daily limit.
That's what we're anticipating.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what we hope, and that's something we're gonna have to discuss with our law enforcement division, of course. And I brought it up to them briefly, and we all kind of went, that's interesting. We'll have to get our input from the cabs, and then we're gonna get together with our regional supervisor and our law enforcement chief in Reno, Christy Knight, and hash that out and see what their interpretation of the law would be. And if we need to amend this and add more specific language, then we will. But we also like to keep things as simple as possible. The more simple you can keep regulations, the more you keep people involved in going out fishing where they know that they're within the law and they're not gonna be hit with something that they didn't understand properly. So we're trying to keep it as simple as possible. So the possession limit as worded now is 10 trout, 20 mountain whitefish, 30 warm water game fish, of which 10 may be black bass and 10 may be walleye. That's it. So that would cover all of our sport fisheries stuff, and that, like I said, that's just a double of the general regulation for the region now, for the western region. Eastern region is doing something a little bit different, so I've heard, I haven't seen their language, and southern region also. But this is the most simple way we found to address it and not be confusing. But there are going to be certain situations that are going to require some discussion. And how do we get that information out to the public so that they know that this change has been made and those certain situations where it may be confusing. So that's the main one that we wanted to just discuss here. Like I said, before we come up with our final draft regulation language that you'll see in the future for vote, this is just discussion item for now. But you will see it in the future. There's some other changes in Douglas, Humboldt, and Washoe counties that we can discuss. We can either do that now or after you chew on that one for a little while and then come back to it. Whatever you guys want to do. I'll go through these now. You guys think about that for a minute. We have an additional urban fishery in Douglas County, Mountain View Park Pond. That's City of Minden built that. We went in, put in some habitat structures, advised engineers on aerators, water inflow, outflow, put some screens on it, and it's a pretty nice little pond, and it's fairly large. We stocked it with bass and bluegill in the fall last year. Started stocking trout in there this year. As of now, it falls under the general regulations. We'd like to include it in our regular urban pond program like we have here at Liberty Pond, where it's a three game fish limit. That's simple. Catch 3 fish, you're good. Doesn't matter what they are.
Again, that would change.
So that would fall under the possession limit of the general regulation. Yeah, so the 10 fish possession limit would apply to that also, yes. Yeah. So you could fish there for 3 days and catch all of your fish that you wanted. If you wanted to camp in town and catch 3 fish per day at an urban pond. The other one that has been a little more, a topic of discussion in some of the other cabs was eliminating a seasonal closure for the Pine Forest waters as well as Catnip. So Knott Creek, Blue Lakes, and Onion would be open year-round instead of having the fall or the winter closure on those.
That would be a recommendation from the department.
That's what we're going to propose. Like I said, these are up for discussion as of now, but there's no biological reason to have that closed in the winter. And most of the discussion has been around access to those, which is, I think, why it was originally closed in the winter, so people didn't try to get up there. But we're going to leave that up to the people of the state of Nevada to figure out if they can get to places where they want to
That
go.
was the reason for the season, was road damage.
So, and if the BLM wants to close roads, that's up to them. If they want to close roads, I suppose. A couple other small ones, eliminating the size restriction on bag for Knott Creek, and so the limit would go to just 1 trout with no size restrictions at Knott Creek. At Knott Creek Reservoir, eliminating the size restriction on keeper fish. So it would go to just a limit as 1 trout, any size. And then electric motors only at Knott Creek instead of the use of gas motors, which has been discussed often up there. So that was another thing that other cabs like to discuss. And then same thing with Catnip, eliminating the seasonal closure, open that to year-round. And then there's also another urban pond in Reno. It's the name might change, but as of now, it's called Kylie Ranch Pond. It was a private pond that our department negotiated and got access to, and we're starting to stock it with bass and bluegill and probably trout. I don't know that we've already stocked trout in there or not, but and aligning that with our other urban ponds as a 3 game fish limit. So those are all the changes that we're anticipating coming up in our next round of regulation changes. So let's discuss. What do you guys think so far? Questions?
In regards to the possession limit over back in the 80s, early 90s, we did have a double possession at times. mainly because of wild horse, well, some of the big reservoirs, I think it was changed. The justification was we just can't afford to give that many fish out. Well, I think most biologists that spend much time in those realize that number of fish are going to be taken anyway, because I'm not driving the wild horse and not eating fish the first night, so I can fish the next night. So I don't think on the resource it has any impact at all. Yeah, possession limit in your freezer and process. Again, that was started at Wild Horse because they're back when Rich Sheep was in Mountain City. He had pictures. They had canneries, the portable canneries set up all along the beach, where you go out and you catch your five or 10 fish and you can them. They didn't consider that possession, so that regulation became enforced, and that could happen again if you say, I mean, the federal law doesn't allow process to be out of your possession. I myself have seen no problem with changing it. I mean, you're dealing with such a few waters per person, and it's mainly the trout waters that have a 5 fish limit, where that even is going to impact or affect or make it better for the fishermen. There's so few limits are ever caught anyway. You know, whether it's 30 fish on or 50 fish, you know, in the valley here. No time in your career have you ever checked anybody with 50 fish.
When I was a seasonal, I did one time. There were some people right at the dam that were illegally fishing, and you guys have an amazing resource right here, because he's, you know, he's been through all this, and these are the same things that I've discussed with our law enforcement division too. Those exact situations came up when we were talking about this. And you're right in that that's the only time I've ever seen anybody in the valley be able to catch a limit of their fish. And the local game warden here, I was discussed with him earlier this week some of this, and he said he has never checked anybody with a limit of fish in the valley. Just people, if they catch that many, they're not keeping that many. So it's not for the situation here. Right? It's for
how many bullheads in Stillwater. That's closing out of fishing. So.
Yeah.
And
And if somebody wants to keep 50 bullheads from Harmon, have a ball. You know, go ahead.
How NDEP Division 5 will take this because of the mercury. It sounds like they're encouraging people to hunt and take fish in the Horn Valley to eat, which we all do.
Well, I'll have to deal with them.
In their management plan, one of their big objectives is to discourage anything you do, planting fish, or that would increase the fishery. Correct. And you know, you can tell me they're trying to fish out. So in the future, there'll be no more mercury. Anyway, yeah.
I think the only one that would be convoluted is you go to one body, fish, get your limit, and then go to another body the same day. I think that's the only part that might get a little kind of confusing, because especially if it's listed as a daily limit, and then it's the same day, you know.
I think it's stated in their regulations about traveling from one with the lesser limit, you can't do it. I think it's in regulations now.
That you cannot do it?
You could fish an area, say you thought your limit was 2 trout. You then could go crick fish and actually have up to 8 more. But you couldn't go the reverse order. You couldn't go catch 8 out of the creek and then go down the reservoir for 5. That would put you over possession.
Right.
But I don't think that's really going to change just because you're doubling the possession.
Well, the only thing I would, yeah, but the only thing that I would think is if somebody does go from one body to another with two limits and then get stopped, and they're obviously not camping because they're at an urban or a small area with no tent or anything. I mean, I think that could be, I think law enforcement might have some trouble with that,
They do.
getting pushback and things like that. But that's the only, on the whole thing, that's the only thing I could see is just kind of being convoluted a little
I
bit.
know that issue's come up, waterfowl. Oregon, shoot them with honkers, come back into Paradise Valley, Nevada. And actually exceed then the possession for that area you're hunting right there.
Right.
You have each other and you kill
Yeah, I mean, can I go kill a limit at Stillwater and then go to Harmon and shoot another limit?
No, because it's a state limit.
Right.
It's for the state.
Those are federal. Yep.
So just to tie on to that, I also think that like changing from where it's a daily limit to a possession limit. Because if I'm, say, camping at Lahontan, I know it's not the best fishery, but camping at Lahontan and I catch my daily limit of fish and then throw them in the cooler and then go back out after lunch and go and fish again. Like, how do you determine that those were caught in that day or not?
That's,
I mean, are they in my possession once they're on the stringer? So now that doesn't count towards the daily limit?
they'll still count towards your daily limit if it was during that day. And that's going to be up to law enforcement to determine when you caught those fish and go from there.
Okay.
Which is the same thing you could do now, right?
Yeah.
I think your biggest opposition to Knob Creek Onion will be for those people who just really wait for that traditional opener, just like happened at Topaz when you.
So when we did Topaz, I had about roughly 80% of the people that I talked to, either on surveys or we did some online surveys. I don't know if you guys saw any of that. Or talked to in person. It was roughly 80% were in favor of opening it year round and 20% were not. I don't know that that is going to be the same for Knott Creek Reservoir. I would guess it's probably going to be less of a percentage that people want it open year round, just because of the access and the people that go up there. You know, it's a different clientele up in the pine forest as opposed to Topaz. So we'll see. But
Comments on that fish in Nevada 2 weeks ago, there was quite a few people in anticipation waiting for the opening or not. And they were concerned about the roads and the snow. But you might have a problem 1 year and after that they forget it.
it's
So
a-
is Topaz going to be the same thing, even though it's split Nevada, California?
Yeah, Topaz was about 2 years ago we made that change, and that was we did it at the same time as California. They were going through regulation changes, and that coincided with our. I spent about 3 years looking at that because it also had to do with the booming population of smallmouth bass in there. And we wanted to be able to target those bass in the fall, but the season closed September 31st. So from October to December 31st, nobody could fish for those bass. So we wanted to take advantage of the bass fishery as well as evaluate the trout fishery and see if the hook, grow, and take management strategy was effective at Topaz. And it can be for trout in Topaz, but it hadn't been for a while, like about 10 years. It hasn't worked well for various reasons. But that was kind of the impetus for making that change at Topaz, was to try to take advantage of the smallmouth fishery that had just kind of blown up and is still doing very well right now. By the way, we electrofished it last week, and there's a lot of bass in there. And also keep consistent with California's regulation changes. They went through a huge simplification process, which changed a lot of their reservoirs from being closed in the fall to being open in the fall. So it was kind of a 3-tiered operation that happened at Topaz, which opened it year round as opposed to having that fall closure. So a little bit different situation than what's going on at Knott Creek. So it's a social would be the only, justification for not opening it year round would be that having that opening day and that excitement around that. There's, it's not a biological issue. So. So I made that note on our conversation regarding the water body limit, daily limit versus the daily total limit for all water bodies. And then Jim had a good comment about going from one water body with a more liberal bag to a more restrictive bag. So that's something that's the kind of feedback we need to hear that needs to be clarified in either regulation or a note on the regulations about how that.
What about the clarification too between like the creek that feeds the water body versus the water body itself? Are those separate?
So if are you talking like a situation like Wild Horse and the Oahe down below Wild Horse? If it doesn't have a special regulation already, I don't know. So some of those water
changing bodies of water even.
Yeah. So some of those water bodies have special regulations already, which are specific to like Wild Horse or Hinkson Slough, which has connection to the other ponds, but it specifically has its own regulations. And those are pretty well defined as to where that pond is. And it's usually pretty well defined as where a lake is as opposed to the creek that feeds it or the outlet down below it. Something to discuss.
Wilson, it addresses the limit, including the reservoir and the inlet and the outlet. And I guess, first, how far is the outlet all the way down to the main Hawaii River? That's kind of a gray area. I was never in favor when they reduced the limit from 100 to 15 stormwater fish instead of 25 to have above the dam 15, below the dam 25. I think even last year or year before when we said seasons, I recommended a hunt be back up to 25. For those years when the white bass may come back, who knows? But, just to have them separated by a dam, makes no sense. Same fishery. Nobody touched the limit anyway. I've seen years where they did up there, 25, when it was 25.
Yeah, when the white bass are going off, you could definitely catch your limit of those out there. You can catch your limit in an hour if you wanted to out there. And they will come back if we can keep water in there for a couple more years. There's still good brood stock of white bass in there. They got to be there for 3 years though. It takes a while for them to reproduce enough to be that big boom like we see sometimes. We'll see it again.
So you'll be coming back in what, October?
I think it's the September one, isn't it? Isn't it the September commission?
Okay,
I think
knew
it's
it was
September.
early fall. Like today, early fall.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
All right. Next item on the agenda is consideration and possible action, heritage projects proposals for fiscal year 2024. The Commission will hear recommendations from the committee and may take action to approve up to $1,540,135.58 for projects submitted for fiscal year 2024 funding. And there's a list of those projects and the amounts associated with them.
What's stormwater fish enhancement in there? I missed that. Red Palmer.
It's our wiper and catfish annual orders. It's okay for me to interject. We did that purchase this year, and Lahontan ended up with about 4,000 wipers. We scattered catfish around to some of the other ponds. Squaw Creek Reservoir is the one that I went to. We couldn't get to North Pond because of the flooding in Mason Valley. But we also put a bunch of wipers into Rye Patch also. So that's where a lot of that money goes, is what we use that for fish that we don't have a hatchery for in state.
I have a motion that we agree with these proposals.
I had no projects that I made disagreement with.
Or make a motion to accept.
I'll second.
And we have a first and a second to agree with the Heritage Project proposals for fiscal year 2024. Any discussion? There being none, call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Next item is motion to approve the biennial small game release plan for fiscal year 2024 and 2025.
So I'm a little curious about this, and I'm assuming it just didn't make it all the way through, but I know there was a recommendation, or somebody had petitioned to have turkey released in Dixie Valley. I don't know whatever came about that.
Be released.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, somebody came here and recommended it, and I don't know, or asked about it, and I don't know that anything ever came about it, but I was looking here, and it doesn't look like it made the cut.
Yeah, all banning Mason Valley and several other locations. Maybe just lack of food stock. I don't know. Some of the projects are by Salisbury, Hungarian Partridge and Estatoyas, Mount Quail. No introduction of American beaver scheduled.
Oh, I saw that. Kind of disappointed.
I'll make a motion to approve the small game release.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and second motion to approve the biennial small game release plan for fiscal years 2024 and 2025. Any further discussion? There being none, call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion passed. Okay, next one is duck stamp request.
So it looks like Carson Valley Conservation District, Fernley WMA, Mason Valley. And Ducks Unlimited Wetland Conservation Support. But then when you read the book, it mentions Carson Lake.
Why don't we put off a fencing project out there?
Wonder why.
You can put fence in the water. You just use boats.
It might take a while to put one in there.
Jake would love it if you went out there and put his fence up with the boat. Go for it.
Only if I can use your guys' airboat. Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the duck stamp request.
Have a second?
I'll second.
First and a second motion to accept the duck stamp request. Any further discussion? There being none, call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passed.
Real quick, sorry, I probably should have said that before the motion passed. This is state duck stamp money, is that correct?
What?
This is state duck stamp money? It's not federal duck stamp money,
No,
right?
state.
We don't have duck stamps anymore.
No,
So I'm
we're
assuming a
allocated.
portion of the license goes to that project?
That's, they still calculate what it would have been if we still had it.
Okay.
Up in Stamp.
So
Figured out.
just to clarify, after no more comments, is that there's not an additional fee for buying another stamp that goes into this.
Next item is get there, guys.
Peggy, I don't think you took a vote on that.
Oh, I thought we did.
Yeah, it
On the
passed.
duck stamp request, we did? Yeah, we did. And it passed, Pam. Jason made the motion and Jim made the second.
And Jason went on a tangent
Yeah.
again afterwards, so it's all right.
He added something to it.
Yeah, just swap those
Rearrange
two.
those in the minutes.
Okay. I'm having trouble finding the
Should be the Upland Game one.
Upland game one.
We approve both the release plan on the first stamp.
We did. This is the Upland Game stamp request.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we approved that.
We, the duck, it was the duck stamp request we approved.
No.
The next one is approval of the Upland Game bird stamp request as presented. And there's $330,680 for the projects that were submitted for 2024 from the
I think most of these are out of our area anyways, aren't they? I'll make a motion to approve the Upland Game bird stamp request.
I'll second.
I have a first and second motion to approve the Upland Game bird stamp request. Any further discussion? There being none, call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passed. Next item is Commission Regulation 2212, Amendment Number 1, Upland Game and Fur Bearer Seasons and Bag Limits for 2022 through 2023. I don't understand why we're looking at that again, but we should have looked at that before, I would think.
Should be
Based on-
23, 24.
Is that what it is?
Supposed to be.
Well, their agenda was wrong.
Yep, and I made a motion to approve it. Dang it.
Did you approve that? Who said that one? Who made the motion?
I made a motion to approve the agenda.
Oh, no, it was the state's agenda that had the date of 2022. What I was commenting about.
Those,
This is the third CAB meeting
No,
I've been
20
to this
22,
week,
yeah,
and all of them
23.
have brought that up. It's not you guys.
they're amending the existing regulations, so that's 22, 23, I believe.
Wouldn't it be 23, 24? Because 22 was last year.
23, 24.
This page does say 23, 24.
Yeah. A couple of the pages say 23, 24.
Yeah, because some of the regulations are proposing going to 24.
Right, but it wouldn't be 22.
No.
No,
It was actually, no, they were established in the 22, 23 season, now they're 23, 24.
so I think
I
that
think
was
it was a
probably.
typo and they caught it because on this one it says 23, 24.
Amend the regulations for upland game, bird and mammals and fur bearers for the 2023 season. The regulation may also include modifications to the spring wild turkey seasons for 2024, is what it's saying.
The only trapping one is the dates of the bobcat ceilings. They got rid of the one in Eureka.
Basically, everything from verbiage, same thing, power changes. They're
Oh.
gonna be tagged.
Why'd they get rid of the one in Eureka? Because there's not a
It
Eureka.
shows up.
Oh, okay. That way. I'll make a motion to approve Commission Regulation 22-12, upland game and fur bearer seasons and bag limits.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Have a first and second motion to approve the Regulation 2212, upland game and fur bearer season and bag limits, 2022, 2023. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Next one is Commission Regulation 2310, Amendment 1, Heritage Tag Vendors for 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve the department's recommendation for the heritage tag vendors.
I'll second.
Have a motion, first and second motion to approve Commission Regulation 2310, Amendment Number 1, Heritage Tag Vendors for 2024. Any further discussion? There being none, call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passed. Okay, the last item is a consideration of possible action items listed on the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners agenda for June 23rd and 24th, 2023 that we may not have covered. Part of our meeting. There being no other items, I'll call for public comment. Chris, do you have any other comments?
I do have something for future agenda items.
Oh, okay.
Before we go too far. I would like to start the discussion or continue the discussion in regards to a salvage, animal salvage regulation in Nevada, specifically in regards to roadkill animals. Driving into town about once a week, there's a dead deer on the side of the road that just goes to waste. 2 weeks ago, that dead deer may have hit my truck specifically, and I was pretty frustrated that I couldn't actually take the deer home because it had done quite a bit of damage to my truck, and it would have maybe felt a little bit better if I got meat out of it. But it just seems like a lot of our resources are going to waste in regards to that. So I would strongly encourage, I don't know who we petition, if it's Department of Wildlife or if this conversation starts that ball rolling, but I really think we should start looking at whether or not we can implement a salvage regulation in Nevada.
Yeah, and we had discussed that before, so,
We did.
yeah, and we just, it seemed like we couldn't get anywhere because there's too many restrictions put on it, but we can ask again about it. What do you think, Chris? It goes to the commission for some kind of action, do you think, or is that?
Put it in your recommendations for future agenda items and for discussion to the commission.
Okay,
That's how they'll become aware that you guys want to talk about it. And
okay,
go talk to them about it.
Okay.
And their next, the next one, the August commission meeting is here in Fallon. So, might be an opportunity there.
Not the first week in
I
August,
believe
right?
this would
It's like,
require an NRF change to legislature.
yeah,
Because
So it's probably a 2-year process. You need to get the commission to accept it.
there's,
That's somewhere, I guess.
there's other states that have those regulations in place, so it might be rip off and duplicate kind of thing to start the conversation. But, yeah, I wanted to do that, just come up with some draft, like, hey, this is what they're doing over here, let's try to do something here. It was August 10th and 11th, is that right? 11th and 12th, something like that.
is that here in this chamber? Okay.
Did you say yes?
August what?
10th and 11th?
11th and 12th.
11th and 12th. So we'll be back.
I know that we were hoping to have that meeting in our new office, but I don't think it's going to be.
Yeah, I
Thank
heard
you. I
like
was curious where it was going to be too.
I heard like October for that. So
Let's see.
okay. Any further business? There not being any, I called for adjournment at 8:50. 7:50. Yeah, 7:50. Sorry, guys. Can't see very well back there. Where is that going, Chris?
It's the